So on this video, I thought I'd just like to talk to you about a few of my plants that can tolerate heat and dryness. Now, there's quite a few plants that can sort of cross over on that. So some can take a little bit more wet and some can take even more dry. But the ones I'm going to show you are the ones that I would recommend and the ones that I've got in my garden. So I'll point out a few in this area first, and then we'll have a little wander around the garden, see if we can find any others that I think would tolerate it as well. First one we'll start with is this one here. And this is a weird looking eryngium. Not everybody's aware of these types of eryngiums, and these produce green flowers. They're kind of oval in shape, and they sit about 1.5 feet above the main plant itself, and it's very, very spiky, as you can see. And this one's called Eryngium agavifolium, hence the shape of it. So that's almost like an agave plant. So that tolerates dryness very well, as do many eryngiums. Just behind it, there's Bolota, and this is Bolota pseudodictymus. And it's a cracking plant. I really like this one. Now, I've had it some time. It's never flowered for me yet. It's been settling in really, but it's now making a lovely little clump. These stalks you can see should expand up to about 1 foot, I would have thought, and then they will contain a bit of a yellowish, whitish flower in between each sort of, or rather at the end of each one, and down the stalk as well. It should produce them down the stalk, which it is gonna, you can see there. So that's a really, really good one, and the drier the situation for this particular one, the better the colour goes. So it goes a more silvery grey, the more heat and dryness it gets. And it's very tolerant of dry soils. Now, just behind that, while we're here, I won't bring too much attention to this one. It's another eryngium, and it's nowhere near where it should be yet. It's grown from seed by myself, and it's called Eryngium bourgatii, and it's a blue as blue can be once the flower comes up. So if you search that one out, it's quite a nice one to have. Right, this one here, this is quite an interesting plant. It's got several names really. I think Stemnacantha is one of them. Raponticum is another, and both of them, so Stemnacantha would have the end name of Centauroides, and so would Raponticum. And this produces a weird looking plant really. I actually a weird looking seed head, and I actually prefer it while it's still in this type of look. It gets a lot bigger. It's not there yet. It's got that silvery look about the seed head, and it sits like that for ages, but gets bigger, keeps developing, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden from the top pops out a pink flower. Really nice shade of pink as well. And even though I'm male, I like pink things as well. So that's really, really nice. Now this is Begonia, and this one is Bressingham ruby. And I won't show you the rest of them, but Bressingham ruby, well, any Begonia really, takes dry conditions very well indeed. And you can tell that just from the leaf, the rubbery type looking leaf. So anything with a silver leaf, rubbery leaf, or spiky leaf, I guess, will take dry conditions. Now this is a cracking plant, this one. Really nice. The most flowers I've seen on it this year, because I think the weather has been absolutely spot on for it. And this one is called Asphodeline lutea. So it's producing all its flowers. Now you can get a lot of the ones I'm showing you can come true from seed. I bought the original one of this as a plant, as a tiny little, and I mean tiny little plant, 2.5, 3 years ago. So this is its 3rd season in. It's doing really, really well, and it's very, very tolerant of dry weather and very, very tolerant of dry positioning. Euphorbias, all euphorbias really do really well in dry conditions, well, especially the wolfenii. Now this one is Euphorbia hang on, give me a second, I'll think of this. Euphorbia mercenites, and it gets a bit bigger than that. I've left some of the seed heads on, I've took loads of them off of this particular one. In fact, there's one over here so we can show what they're going to look like. I take them off because we get so many seedlings, and in actual fact, this one and the one I've just shown are both seedlings. Do really well. So this is an allium, and it's a chive. And all bulbs really do well in dry conditions because they store their own food and they store their own water. So they do really well in dry conditions. And this is no exception. So it's just a chive really. No particular one. Just one that I pulled from out of the garden. So that's really nice. Right, this is Phlomis. Now the normal types of Phlomis is Sophruticosa and Russeliana, which is the purple one. Sophruticosa is the yellow one. Now this is another purple one, and this is called it's Italica. So it's Phlomis Italica, and it makes more of a shrub. And again, fairy leaves. Look, fairy leaves. It's a really nice plant. I wish I'd not cut it down last year because it would have sprouted again from all the almost dead-looking twigs. But I decided, well, it was getting quite big and it was getting kind of floppy, so I decided that I would give it a bit of a chop. In fact, why is that there? That doesn't need to be there anymore, does it? Take out your plant sports. You don't need it. The reason I left that there was because originally it was so small I needed to remember where it was. And actually, as the plant grew, completely forgot it was in there. It's only because I've clipped it back now that I've just spotted that. Sorry about all the waffling, but I'm just trying to keep it real. I don't do any editing, as you know. Now, this is a cracking plant, and it's a bronze fennel. It's absolutely wonderful, and this is just the ordinary type of bronze fennel. I'm going to show you another one in a minute that is better than this one. This will live in the very driest of conditions, and each year it'll produce a yellowy seed head, very sparse seed heads on top, but it's a really nice one. And all fennels will take dry conditions, and do they have a scent? Yes, they do. They have this lovely scent that I think smells like Pernod. If you've ever drunk Pernod, the drink, I think it smells like that. So that's a really good one, and for dry conditions. And I've got it on my driveway. And this is on a slope again. So all the water drains away pretty quickly, and it gets sun virtually. If the van wasn't parked where it is, that'd be in full sunshine at the moment. So it gets sunshine practically all day. So here's the Euphorbia wolfenii that I just mentioned a minute ago, what would do well. Wolfenii always do well in dry conditions. They are a Mediterranean spurge after all, and there's lots of different varieties. This is simply a selected form. But this particular one that I've selected has some lovely, almost stumpy flower heads really, and I guess it's more like a particular variety called Humpty Dumpty. It's not Humpty Dumpty because it's just a selected seedling. But it's very much the same as Humpty Dumpty. Okay, here's another little fennel. That's a self-set. So I'm told, oh, well, fennels seed all over the place. Yes, they can do, depending where they are. But for me, they're not seeding around as much as you would think. Yeah. Now then, because I said we're keeping this real and up to date, this is a branch that I've taken off this tree here. And all will be exposed in good time why that's actually been taken down. I'm not going to tell you just yet. That's another little project underway. Okay, here we go. Now this is an ornamental grass, and it looks absolutely terrible at the moment. Absolutely terrible. I'm not even going to talk about this grass at the minute because it just looks so terrible, but it is going to seed. It does prefer dry conditions. Now it's doing so terrible because of the winter, and I moved it at the wrong time, and as you can see, I've got it really in a bit of a dip there, and then I pulled all the soil back around it. Now that's called Lamprophysis hyaneronimi, and it is a beauty. It gets a lot bigger than this, and I said I didn't want to show you that, didn't I? But, oh well, we ought to really, because it has the most elegant looking grass as it gets going. So it's one of the early ones. These seed heads are wonderful. So it's Lamprophysis ionorami. And not always easy to get hold of in the UK, but it is available. I lost at least 30 of my young ones that I had them in pots this year, and they simply didn't make it, whereas this one in the ground has. So I don't think all is lost with this particular one, because I think once it's in your garden, you're not going to struggle with it. Now, this particular one is also at Beth Chatto's, and she's got a lovely example of this, and it gets a lot taller. I was quite surprised to find how tall it actually does get, and the seed heads, how tall they get. The weird thing with this one is that it seeds at 2 times of the year, this being one of them. But again, it will start to set flowers again, or seed heads, about October time. September, October time. It'll start sending up even more. So it sort of flowers twice, which is quite interesting. So remember, we're talking about plants that can take dry. Not necessarily just dry, they can take other conditions. Some of the plants I've shown you, but the ones I'm showing you at the minute will take exceptionally dry ones. Now this is a lavender, and it's called Lavandula Munstead, and it is a really nice one. I really like this. It's got a deep blue colour once it comes out, and it's probably one of my favourites. I've got another one as recommended to me by a friend called Grosser something or other. Grosser, I can't remember. As I said, I'm keeping it real, so I don't look up the names. But it's another good one. I'll try and find the name for you, and it's down further down the garden, but it's a really, really nice one. Now this is a Stachyus, and we talked about this one before. And I'll look for the name on this one. Oh, the slugs seem to love it. Now, it's listed as Helen von Steen, or Stein, however you want to pronounce that. But I think it's actually Countess Helen von Stein. So it's a Stachyus and a Stachyus byzantina, and the normal one, the normal lamb's ears ones. Great. Now, I love this one because it's a little bit different to the rest. And as I tell you, the snails seem to like this one. But anyway, they're not eating it, but they seem to like congregating around it. Now, one thing I've got failing here is that this has got a rust on it. Not a rust, sorry. I forget what they call that now, but look at that. The mould. It's like a mould on it. So it's really disappointing me. I've looked it up, and I think the only possible reason really for this is it's not getting enough air around the leaves. And that's all I can think of on this. And again, it has this really soft feel about it. And that's all I can think of. And I'm a bit disappointed, really, because the plant itself is wonderful, but it seems really susceptible to it. So the recommendation is that you clear away the bottom of it, or clear some of it away to allow it to get the air breathing around it. But it seems a bit counterintuitive to me, that, because I'd have thought it wouldn't mind. But it does. It doesn't seem to like, I don't know, not getting air in between the leaves. But I thought it would be fine. But it's not, so let's not harp on about that one. I'm going to put up with it for this year, but I'm actually seriously considering moving it, putting it into a better position, because I think the where I've got it on this stone, I don't think it's getting quite what it wants. I don't think it's really getting enough nutrients to it, although it looks really healthy. I think that's partly to do with it. Okay, so Islatelophyums. I have some good Islatelophyums, and they're the old sedums, and they do really well in dry conditions because of the rubbery leaf, so they protect themselves. Now this particular one is, I believe, to be a cross with Sedum matrona, which is a very famous one. And this is my own one. I call it Igor the Giant, because when I originally found it, the 2 leaves it had were absolutely huge. So its first 2 leaves that it produced were bigger than I'd ever seen on any young plant. And I took it with me, because I was moving at the time. I took it with me. And it looks quite nice. it's got a lot of attributes that Matrona has, but it has a really nice look. It seems to produce a little bit more pink than what Matrona does. Now, grasses. I can't do any talk on gardens without talking about grasses. So this is China Clover rubra. This is the smaller one of the two, or four that I've got rather. There's the bigger one. And this does really, really well in dry conditions. It really doesn't mind it. So nice one. Right, Origanum rosenkupel. It's a new plant in. It's not doing very well at the moment. And that's my fault really, because I've not dug out enough of what is really rubbish soil. You know, and you've got to give them a good start in life, and I don't believe I've given that a good enough start in life. It is growing again now. I've fed it and watered it now, which it shouldn't really need once it's established. But just to get it going, I've done that. I'm going to check that planting hole, and I'm convinced it's big enough, but I can't remember whether I added any good stuff with it, just to give it a kickstart. So that's Origanum rosenkupel, and it's one of the best actually. And it has this lovely rosy flower I really like. Gets to probably make about 1.5 to 2 foot in the end. And it's nicely scented as well. Okay, more grasses. Again, I can't do this video without talking about grasses. So this is Elymus magellanicus. And it's just a beauty. Probably the bluest of all the blues. As you can see, the sun's sidelighting it at the moment. And it is an absolute stunner. That's beautiful. Now I've actually put it next to this Hylotelephium, which is from the Brilliant group, and it's actually called Brilliant, this particular one. It's real vivid pink when it comes out as well. So that's a really nice one. And it will self-seed around, gently self-seed around. Now there's another eryngium there called Ebernium. A lot smaller than Agavifolium, but nevertheless produces a very similar flower, although more rounded. Very small at the moment. Over time that will get better and better, but it's not been a big fast grower for me at the moment. It's always remained quite a small one. So we have more Hylotelephiums, and I really like this one. I really do like this one. This one's called Carfunkelstein. And it gets a lot darker than this. This is just its first phase, and it gets real deep purple as it gets going. And it will do really, really well. So Achilleas, I like to add to my flower collections because Achilleas do really well under dry conditions as well. And this one's called Credo. And it's a kind of, I would say, a really pale lemony colour as opposed to yellow. But it's a good form, and it's good upright form as well. And this is one of Ernst Pagel's selections. And a jolly good one it is as well. So that's Achillea Credo. Really, really nice. Well worth getting. And there's another Achillea. This is Moonshine. And this, to me, this is a Bressingham one, a Bressingham find, and it's years and years and years old. It was found years and years ago. And it is a particularly nice one, but its only failing is it flops a little bit, which kind of annoys me because I like plants to, to almost look after themselves. But this one tends to be a little bit more floppy, and you can help that by not putting it in a well-fed area. Now this has to be fed it, actually. I put some mulch into this border on a regular basis because some of the plants do need it, but that one doesn't. So I try to avoid it the best I can, but obviously some's going to leach into it, so some of the feed that goes into the garden itself, into the border itself, will leach into that. So I can't really stop it. Now this is Elictotrichum sempervirens, or sempervirens, and it's flowering at the moment, or seeding. And I don't know whether you'd call that interesting. I like it. What I really like is the leaf, this blue leaf. And this is only half the size it's going to make. This is going to make about 3 foot in the end, and will be a bit of a stunner. but it does seed around. You'll not find many, but you will find seeds or seedlings hanging around it. So that's going to look really good. And I particularly placed it there because of I put alliums there as well, because the blues and the purples of the allium sort of complement each other. So I like to see those together. Let's have a look, see what else I can find. Acanthus. Now this particular acanthus is a bit of a good one actually, and it's Acanthus mollis, but it's it is Acanthus mollis, but it's the Spinosa group. So Spinosa, as it suggests, is spiny, and it is spiny. Would I say that's a bit? It's not spiky though, so when I'm touching it, it doesn't feel a hard spine, but it looks spiny. Now this one's called Rouladen, and it can almost be evergreen. It wasn't this year. It mainly died away, but it's come back. I think it had about 3 leaves. It kept 3 of the leaves, but it is supposedly virtually evergreen, all except the worst winters, which we had a bit of a bad spell, which knocked it back. But this produces a very upright, and is probably one of the tallest forms that you can get. And it produces a white flower, unlike the usual purpley flower. This border's coming on now. It looks like it's a bit sparse, but there is a lot of plants in here that are still immature little plants at the moment. But while we're here, we'll mention this one. So this, again, is a bronze fennel. And I'm trying to think of its name. I can't think of its name. I really should do more research before I start telling you about these ones. But it really maintains this really nice brown look. Actually, we found the label, so we can definitely ID it. So it's funiculum, which a lot of them are. They're all that. Vulgare, and it's called Smoky. But it retains, and it's supposed to retain this bronzy look throughout, even when it flowers. Now, when some of the bronze fennels flower, they tend to lose a lot of the colour. But supposedly, this one is supposed to keep its colour in. Now, I got this from Beth Chatto's, and they rate it. They say it should be able to seed true. So a lot of the seedlings, and it won't be all true seedlings, but some of them should come to look exactly like that. So that's Funiculum vulgare Smoky. And it really does stand out. If I could, no, I won't do it. Now, if I know when I go up to the big one and then come down to this one, there is a massive difference. And I do rate this one. I really like it. So it takes very dry conditions. Worth getting. So we get some plants that will kind of cross over, as I said, into sort of a damper area or a almost shaded area and a sunny area, and this being one of them for me. This one's called Salvia, and it's Salvia amistad, quite a famous one. Salvia amistad, Salvia caradonna, this one, and it's a really, really nice form, and an upright, strong form. And I found this to take quite a dose of dry weather, actually, dry soil, and it does really well in that. And then I've got another one. So this one I've had before, managed to get hold of it again. And this one is called Salvia. Is it a particular variety? Doesn't tell me. But it's a Salvia, and it's called Anya's. Oh, sorry, there is one called Anya's Choice. That's a different plant. This one's called Dear Anya, and it's supposedly named after Piet Oudle's wife, who apparently is a bit crazy. I can't answer that, whether she is or she ain't. Never met her. But I love Piet Oudle's stuff. Absolutely love it. And it's just coming into flower now, and it's a small plant, but absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, that one. I love it. As I said, I've had it before in other gardens. Let's have a look. Dry. So I think we've probably exhausted the ones you really do need to know about. Apart from alpines, which we all know will take that. They'll take very dry conditions. And this, another grass actually, this is Lamus arenarius, and this one is a sand dune lover in the UK especially. And it's commonly called the marang grass, and it lives on coastal areas really, in sand dunes. But it's a spreader, and you do not want this one out in the garden. It will take over. It will eat you out of house and home. In fact, that's stopping. Yeah, it'll eat you out of house and home. So you really do need to be careful. Don't ever plant it in the garden. I wouldn't recommend it, not unless you got a big sandbank where you want it to take over. So this particular one, I've had before, and it's Acenia, Inamis, and Purpurea. So it's a really, really nice, tight forming one. It loves gravel gardens really. I've put it in here because I want it to establish a little bit more before I actually commit it to the ground. Because I've had it before where you put them into the ground, this particular one, and it just doesn't sort of get going. It just sits around for quite some time. So this time I decided to put it in that. So there you go. Pine trees while we're at it. Pine trees will take dry conditions. They like sandy soils, but they'll take dry conditions. Remember, most things eventually need some sort of a water. So you can't just assume that they're going to just sit in. If we had a drought, say, for 6 weeks or something, a lot of plants would die off. Some would improve. These would survive quite nicely. But some plants would just die away. And either completely die or maybe die away and come back again. So that's Asphodylene lutea again. I just love that one. That's why I wanted to show it the second time. It's just got this lovely look. And when it starts getting side lit by the sun, the back one, it's just stunning. So I don't think there's any more I can show you. So yeah, remember, don't overfeed these things. If they like dry conditions generally are poor in nutrition. So try not to feed them at all if you can help it, because they really won't appreciate that. But that's a little selection I thought you might be interested in, and hopefully you'll give one or two of those a try. And we'll see what happens with mine this year. But they are doing exceptionally well. So there you go. A little bit about plants that are probably suitable for dry areas, and one or two of them, as I said, might be okay in other areas. So I'll talk to you on the next one. Ta-da!